Do you remember any of the names of the people who were involved in those kind of studies with the animals?
Yeah, well, the one person that I think I remember is a gentleman named Christensen, and subsequently I think I had seen publications with his group that was looking for genetic relationships between what we described as the MH process and the animals that were useful for their commercial purposes.
Now, one of the people about this time in the 1970s that were really interested in the problem of malignant hypothermia, one of them was Beverly Britt. The other, obviously, was Dr. Michael Denborough in Australia, Dr. Jerry Gronert, who was at the time in Minnesota, and Tom Nelson. So what was your interactions with any of those individuals?
Well, Tom Nelson, I visited his laboratory a couple of different times, and he was doing different variations on the muscle contracture stuff and then he eventually moved to what I would call a subcellular set of things that were looking for ryanodine sensitive calcium populations within the muscle cell to initiate the process of the contracture model. Now, the others you were talking about,
Beverly Britt.
Beverly Britt, I visited her laboratories on a couple of occasions and talked about the various ways of isolating muscle groups to determine whether or not we had, full body muscle contraction or whether we could isolate it and work only with a small segment. Part of the issue was not having to sacrifice an entire animal to study the condition, but to be able to have a small piece. And one of the difficulties with any of these mammalian preparations was when you isolated a piece of muscle, you cut through the entire fiber so that the muscle fiber was going downhill as soon as you got through with the cutting, and that made it difficult to get a clear picture of what was going on.
I guess one other question is, as you mentioned earlier, that the animals who received the drug were flaccid, except they were breathing. So the diaphragm muscle was more resistant to being affected by the drug than the skeletal muscle, and then skeletal muscle comes in a couple of different types as well. When you were doing those early studies, did you do studies on different types of skeletal muscle, diaphragm versus the type 1, type 2 fibers? No.
No, we did not. Didn't have the opportunity to do that. We were, we were out of the dantrolene game pretty quickly, in terms of, there was a toxicity problem on one side and a limited market for the other on the other side. You've got to put your resources against something else. So
left it up to the other scientists to
expand it, and so forth. And you see some of the stuff that people did subsequent to that. That was some pretty good subcellular work done.